Wow, it's been a long time since I've been up here. I actually gave a speech on this same stage when I was in confirmation. I was a senior leader, and they asked me to give a witness about. They asked me to, give a witness about what went on in confirmation, and so I talked to the same kind of group, and God, I'm being so nervous. But it's been 9 years since I was sitting where you guys are sitting, and so I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk a little bit about being open to what your potential path might be in life, what your unique mission might be in life. And I'll start it off with a story. It's not a very happy story, but I'm going to try to make it funny. In the fall of 2012, I found myself in a really rough patch. And that might be the most, the wildest understatement of my life, because it was not just rough, I was miserable, I was unhappy, and I was completely lost. And I didn't really know what to do. And this kind of came upon me in a weird way, because I made this realization while I was at a wedding. And instead of having fun and being inside and laughing and dancing with everybody else, I was sitting outside on the curb, and I was crying. And I wasn't just crying, I was doing that ugly girl cry, like that thing, And thank God I wasn't alone. I was with my friend Matt, and Matt, I swear, was meant to be there in that moment. And Matt and I talked, and we tried to figure out, okay, how did I get to this place? Why was I so unhappy? And we went through the story, we were both kind of confused, because seemingly I had done everything right. So the 2 years prior, I had been working on Wall Street, which is a fairly prestigious job and one that a lot of people wanted. Before that, I graduated from Yale University with a degree in psychology, which is a pretty decent school. A lot of people want to go there. And then I graduated from Marcus High School, obviously the best high school that's in this sport. But I graduated, fourth in my class. I had a scholarship to play softball in college. I had done all the right things. And yet I found myself in this really unhappy place. And seriously, I sat up in church, I listened to my parents, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't stay up past midnight, often. And, I thought I had this all figured out, and I couldn't really figure out what had gone wrong. And over the next few years, I pieced together, and on my road to recovery, I came up with these 4 lessons that I'm going to share with you guys tonight. Lessons about being open, what it means to be open. Parents, I'm going to be talking mostly to the teens tonight, but I found along the way of doing these talks, and this is what I do professionally now, is that oftentimes if you open your mind, you might find that there are little places where you can feel in that same transition space as your young ones do. And if you allow God to speak to you there, sometimes some change can happen, which is pretty cool. So when we talk about being open to what's possible in your life, I really believe that grace builds on nature. So what does that mean? Nature is what comes to us easily, right? It's the behaviors that are natural to you, it's the motivations that get you up in the morning, it's your specific set of circumstances, how you were raised, right? All those things are your foundation for then God to build upon with grace, right? So when we talk about being open, I like the word open, it's a wonderful word, it's a nice visual, but it's a great acronym as well. So we're going to talk about these 4 lessons that have to do with the word open. So O stands for opportunities. We're going to talk about being open to all the opportunities that exist in your world. P stands for possibility. So we're going to talk about being a person of possibility. What does that mean? E stands for expectations. So being open to living a life that's separate from all the expectations that are put on you by society or other people. And N is my favorite, and it's the hardest. N stands for no fear. Being courageous, not letting fear dictate our lives. Okay? So open, let's start with O. Just, opportunities. Just by the fact that you guys are sitting here, I know that you're people of opportunity, right? Even ones that you probably have taken for granted over the years. You've had the chance to attend school. That in and of itself is probably a lot more than a lot of the world, a lot more than the number of people that you realize. You've had the opportunity to explore extracurricular activities or hobbies or things you might be interested in. Many of you have had the chance to travel. You've been to the Mexico mission trip or anything like that. But the one that I know for sure is that you have the freedom and the opportunity to express your faith however you want to, because you're here right now, which is a pretty cool thing. And I'm not going to stand up here and lecture you on how you should be really appreciative of all the opportunities that you've been given. That's actually the opposite of the point I'm trying to make. Because what you'll find is that these opportunities that keep presenting themselves in your life, sometimes they're not the right ones for you. So I had a lot of the same similar set of opportunities. Again, went to high school around here. I was given the opportunity to play sports, and I tried things like art and music, and I tried dance. for a reason. And, you know, those things really resonated with me. They were great opportunities in my life. When I graduated high school, I started to get some opportunities that were maybe not necessarily what I wanted to do. The first one was when I graduated high school. I had the, you know, what many would call a great opportunity to play a collegiate level sport. I was on the later stages of kind of burning out though from softball. I didn't know if I really wanted to play, but it was a readily available opportunity, so I ended up taking it. The next one happened after I graduated from college. I had the opportunity, the great opportunity, to work on Wall Street, which again, is something that a lot of people want, but in 2009, nobody really wanted to talk to the finance industry, so it wasn't for me, but I said, okay, this is a readily available opportunity, so I'm going to take it. Then it started to get worse. I had several opportunities to steal money. I had several opportunities to lie about trades. I had several opportunities to have relationships with coworkers that would have furthered my career. I had several opportunities to buy anything I wanted, experience anything I wanted, and that could have been a really scary spiral. Thankfully, I started to realize over time that just because an opportunity is readily available and right in front of you doesn't mean it's one that you have to take. But that's something you learn over time, right? How do we become good consumers of the opportunities that are available to us? How do we start to differentiate between what's truly resonating with us and what's not? And that brings me to P in open, which is possibility. The definition of possibility, I know people hate when speakers are like, Webster's Dictionary defines, but I'm going to do it. So Webster's Dictionary defines possibility as a choice in a given set of alternatives. Okay, great, we all know that. But when you're a true person of possibility, someone who lives truly in just all the amazing things that are possible in your life, you start to see that there are options outside of those opportunities that are right in front of you. So, when you're really cultivating, again, that idea of possibility, you start to open your mind to things that you maybe didn't see before. So when I was really, like I said, unhappy in 2012, I decided to pull my head up out of the sand and put my big girl pants on and figure it out. Like, why was I so unhappy? And I looked around me and I realized that that unhappiness was stemming from all the unhappiness around me. Every one of my coworkers was miserable. Every one of them was miserable. Nobody wanted to come to work, let alone come to work excited and happy to be there, right? Everybody was motivated by money. How can I get more of it? How can I make sure I don't lose what I have? How can I keep up with so-and-so who has a little bit more money than I do, whose house is a little bit bigger than mine? It was constant, and they were stuck in these golden handcuffs. It was this irony of wealth that I've never seen in my life. And they were all just so miserably unhappy, except for one. His name was Martin. And Martin was a good old boy. He was Southern. He was from Arkansas. He would talk to you about trades in that really slick voice that he had. And he had this great head of hair. Oh my God. He had this silver hair. It was beautiful. We used to call him the Silver Fox. I'm not kidding. So one day the Silver Fox was telling us a story. And he was talking about his son, who presumably is like the Brazen Fox or the Red Fox. I don't know. So the Silver Fox was telling us, oh yeah, my son, he just got back from this amazing trip. He went on a semester at sea. Has anyone heard of semester at sea? Okay, well I hadn't, but I had just gotten off the phone with my mom, during which conversation I had said, Mom, I'm selling everything that I own, I'm quitting my job, and I'm going on a trip around the world. So the minute I hear, which is not going to happen, I was just really unhappy that day. So the minute I hear semester at sea, my ears perk up, and I'm listening to the Silver Fox's story a little bit more intently now. And he's telling us, oh yeah, so he went on this semester at sea, and he met all these great people, and he sailed around the world, and he had these, experiences that he'll never have the opportunity to have again. And, I'm not one to say no to a coincidence if it makes sense, so I Googled semester at sea, and coincidentally, maybe not, the next voyage was called Trip Around the World. Well, I think that might be for me. So I ended up, applying. 6 months later, I find myself on a boat in the middle of the Indian Ocean, banging on a bongo, because drum circles just happen in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And, when the drumming was over, we got back to our conversation, which was basically this. What's possible for us? What can we do if we build businesses that have the goal of changing the world, or if we just have one better conversation tomorrow. What's possible? And I realized that I had put myself in that group of people, the people of possibility that I was talking about, without even realizing it. Being open to what's possible in your life. And I started to wonder, okay, how had all these people found each other? There had to be something, right? Something that pulled us all into that same experience together, something that called to each of us that was similar. I started to think about that, and that's what brings me to the letter E in open. E for expectations. I truly believe, and if you don't hear anything else this evening, please hear this. You will never be free to chase that authentic, unique mission and dream of yours that God's written on your heart until you let go of the expectations that other people have put on your life. You don't need them. Even sometimes the expectations that you put on yourself, right? What does success look like? Of course it looks the same for everybody, right? What does right life look like? The same for everybody, right? That's what society will tell you, but I'm here to tell you, you've got to get rid of these expectations because they're holding you back from chasing that unique dream of yours. I want to make the distinction that not all expectations are bad, the ones that your parents have put on you from a young age, like, please come home on time and make good decisions, and I would love you to get good grades. Those are great things, and they're things that you should continue to do, but it's these big societal expectations that you have to go to the right school, or you have to get the right job, or you have to be with the right person. Those are the ones that I'm talking about getting rid of. And this is really, really hard for us to do sometimes because they're so deeply written on us, and society is everywhere, right? It's the definition of society. So I thought I'd figured it out. I thought, okay, well, I was in softball for too long, but I quit eventually. I worked on that Wall Street job for too long, but I left. I did my thing, but I was so wrong. I was so wrong. I came back from semester at sea and I started working. Thankfully along the way I met some incredible mentors, people who just spoke to my heart. They helped me figure out, what my mission would be, and so I came back with this mission of making people better versions of themselves. Right? If that sounds vague to you, good, because it's really, really vague. It doesn't mean anything. And I was trying to figure this out, right? I was like, oh, I got this mission, it's gonna be great. And I was like, okay, people, so talent, making people better, development. I'll do talent development. Perfect. So I started working for this woman who owned her own consulting firm. Her name was Nina. And Nina had written a best-selling book, and she parlayed that book into a speaking career, parlayed the speaking career into a business. And so she and I would go into companies and we would teach people about leadership and emotional intelligence and diversity and try to make them better at their jobs and make them happier with what they were doing. And it was great work, but because it was a growing business, she couldn't pay me very much. So while I was working for her, I had to cobble together all these other odd jobs. And you guys will learn the idea of a side job sooner, if not later. But I had some crazy ones. I worked at Lululemon selling clothes. I worked for a restaurant, a local restaurant, as a waiter. I would write anything freelance you could come up with. And then at one point, the weirdest one I ever had was, I was an online textbook collaborator. I don't know what that is. But they paid me to do it, so I did it. But there was this constant pressure. All of my friends, and even my parents were going, okay, well, when are you going to get a full-time job? Like, when are you going to figure this out? Isn't that the goal? Don't you want benefits again? I said, well, yeah, I miss going to the doctor. That was just this, really deep societal pressure for me to just get a normal job. We should just be doing the normal thing. And a year into working for Nina, I found one of those jobs, and I felt so much pressure and expectation that I took it. And everything in my body at the time was saying, no. No, keep going. You've already come this far. You've already fought. You've already risked so much. Why are you going back and living by the expectations of other people? Stop. But I did it anyway. And it took not 6 months for me to realize that this square peg round hole situation was not going to work. And the company felt the exact same way, so that's a rough day, by the way. What I want to get at here with expectations is that it's so important for you guys to understand that allowing other people's expectations on your life to dictate what you do every day or even once in a momentous decision-making process, it's not going to lead you to happiness. It's not going to lead you to that personal fulfillment that you're looking for, and sometimes it's going to lead you away from that unique mission that we're talking about, what God's written on your heart, and where where he wants you to go. So, I know I've asked you guys to do a lot. Even, the famous poet E.E. Cummings has this great quote about being yourself. She said, "To be yourself in a world that's fighting night and day to make you everybody else is the hardest battle that you'll ever fight." Okay, so I've asked you to do a lot, right? I've asked you to look at your life and say, okay, these are the opportunities that I have in front of me. And, oh, by the way, some of them might not be the right ones. These are the possibilities I see in front of me, but, oh, by the way, there might be some I haven't even thought of yet. And you want me to do all of this without worrying about what other people think? At all. Who can say that they've lived their life that way thus far? Because I haven't. I've screwed up a bunch. But the only way that we can do that brings me to end, which is no fear, right? The only way that we can be those people of opportunity, people of possibility, people who live bold, courageous lives is to let go of fear. And not just let go of fear, because I'm not going to ask you guys to be fearless. That's ridiculous. There's a great quote by FDR that says that, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the decision that something else is more important than what you're afraid of. So I had to decide, okay, what's more important to me than what I'm afraid of? And for me, that was living a life with no regrets. So I learned really early on that there are two basic kinds of regrets. That's it. Just two things in this world that you can regret. And you guys surprised? Do you want to hear what they are? Okay. So two kinds of regrets. The first are regrets of things that you've done. Regrets, they're called in psychology regrets of commission. The second is regretting something that you chose not to do, which is a regret of omission. And I know we've all felt that angst, that when we've done something that we regret, and there's this horrible consequence and this outcome and we're guilty and it feels awful. And you would probably imagine that, regrets of omission feel the same way. But you would be wrong, because regrets of omission don't just have one outcome that you regret, they have an infinite number of outcomes that you could possibly regret, right? Because there's no end of it. It never happens. So your mind is constantly going, well, what if, and maybe, and I wonder, and they eat away at us, right? They eat away at us over time. I know if there are some of you in the audience now going, yeah, there's this one thing that I didn't do when I was 18. I wish I had done something different, because what could have happened, right? So when I left that last job, I had a literal come to Jesus moment. I don't know if any of you guys have ever done this, but it was super intense. It's the best word I can come up for this. I was literally praying and crying, and the subject of all this praying and crying had one resounding theme. I just remember sitting there going, please, just tell me what to do. I've taken all this risk, I've done all these things, I've tried so hard, can you just tell me what it is that you want me to do? I'm trying, I'm really trying, can you just show me what it is? And I got one answer. No, you're not. You're not trying. You're doing things the same way you did them before, and the same way you did before that, and the same way you did before that, and guess what? Einstein was right, you're getting the same result. So in that moment, I think when God talks to you, you're like, okay, I'll do it. I realized that I really wasn't trying. I was just living under those same expectations and those same sense of what's possible and those same opportunities that kept presenting themselves. And I realized that I needed to finally go and do my thing, the thing that I had always been wanting to do, the thing that I was most scared to do, get rid of that fear and really be courageous about it. And that was to start my own business. So at the end of last year, after this come to Jesus moment, I decided, all right, now's the time. God said do something different. This is really different, so I'm going to do it. And I started my own business, and it's been pretty incredible. So now I work with young adults and youth, and I help them not only find work that they love, but find work that loves them. Work that allows them to behave naturally and to do the things that they do naturally and be successful naturally. And I work with businesses, helping them match people to position, helping them get the right person in the right role, helping them move teams around internally to get them where they need to be. And I thought the minute that I got there, the minute that I said yes, that everything would fall down in front of me, it would be really easy. Every day is hard. Every day I have to choose courage over fear. Every single day I have to decide that my impact on you guys, if there is one, and I hope there is more important than anything that I was afraid of. day I have to do that. But you know what? Helen Keller said life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. So I dare every day, because I'd rather have that than nothing at all. No fear. So I'm going to end this with a little story. It's my favorite, one of my favorite stories. It's such a simple moment, but it's one of those resounding kind of moments in life that stick with you. It's about my friend John. And John and I used to work on the trading floor together. And you know, we didn't get very many breaks during the day. We worked probably 12, 13-hour days. And because you're trading, you know, you can't be away from your desk for very long, or else you'll miss a phone call and thus money. So one afternoon, you know, when we were both particularly unhappy, we decided, okay, we're going to take a break, take a 5-minute walk. And when we did our walks, we would always go up the same escalator, around the same terrace, and then down the same escalator every single time. And every single time we would talk about the same things, which was how unhappy we were in our business, how much we really didn't love being around our coworkers, and oh, by the way, didn't want to be any of them, so we weren't really sure what we were doing there. And just how we wanted to get out, but we felt so trapped there. But one day we were walking up there, and it changed a little bit. We were walking along the terrace, and then there was this creek right behind our building. And normally there was, you know, just like ducks and normal stuff going on in the creek. But today, or that day, there was a bridge that was being worked on by some construction workers. And I just pointed to it and absentmindedly went, oh, what do you think is going on over there? And John gave it like a, and his eyes lit up. And he just started like shaking a little bit and was like, oh my God, so okay, I studied engineering. And then in engineering, here's what happens with bridges. When it gets cold, they condense. And then when they condense, they have to extend them because, you know, the bridge would fall down. And then, you know, if the bridge fell down, it would be really horrible. And then he was just going on and on. And he literally came to life right in front of me. I worked with this man for over a year. And I had never seen light in his eyes like that. He came alive. I lost him for a moment. And then the minute that we started walking back to our desk, and like I saw the drain start to happen. And it was old John again. That moment was when I realized that we were doing it all wrong. We were doing it all wrong. We were living our lives based on the opportunities that other people had deemed worthy. We were living our lives closed-minded to all the possibility that was out there. We were living our lives based on the expectations that other people had set on us years ago. We were living our lives trapped by the fear that whatever was out there could potentially be worse. So my challenge to you is this. Don't be John. Don't be John. Say no to that life. Be a person that's open to what God's calling you to. Be a person that's open to opportunity and possibility and living without expectations and living without fear. You know, the reality here is this. Like, a lot of you guys are going to go to college, and a lot of you guys are going to work for businesses, and that's awesome. Those are incredible opportunities. They're ones you should seize if they call to you. And Chris is going to come up here in a little bit, and he's going to tell you guys the practicality of that world, and it's wonderful. He's got amazing information to share with you. But it's my job to stand here and tell you that while those may be parts of your story, they don't have to be all of it. God has this beautiful plan for you to have an abundant life. Not just a life where you don't have light in your eyes, but an abundant one where you're alive every day. And it's written on your hearts. It's in the interests that you have, it's in the passions that you have, it's in the story that you've built over the years, all of your experiences, all of your skills. It's already in there even if you don't know about it. And all you have to do is be open to it. All you have to do is be open and listen and follow it. And I promise you there are better things to come. Thank you guys.
For that great introduction. So, like you said, I've been doing college admissions counseling for a real long time, and I just want to let you guys know that it's not all bad news. He talked about how Tracy gave a great, inspiring talk, and now it's time for Chris to give a great, like, what's the alternative? The opposite of inspiring. But I want to let you guys know that it's not all bad news as it relates to college admissions counseling. I think that all that we hear today is about how the competition is fierce and you have to be perfect to get into college. And truly, that's only true for a tiny percentage of colleges. That there's over 2,000 four-year college universities in the United States, and the majority of those schools accept more than 2/3 of their applicants. So if you want to go to college, you can do it. We also say too that that tiny percentage of colleges, there's only about 40 colleges in the United States that we talk about that have less than a 20% admission rate. And it is difficult to get into those schools. And you do have to have great grades and great test scores and have a patent pending for a medical device and have built an orphanage in Nepal right after the earthquakes. These are things that you need to do. However, the prestigious colleges don't have the market cornered on great experiences and on happy and successful graduates. Because we know that there are plenty of people who have gone to schools who are not those schools, who have loved their college experience. And that's what I want to communicate to you guys today. You don't have to go to a prestigious college, as the world determines it, to be successful. And you do have to work hard right now so that you can find the right colleges for you and then take advantage of what's available to you while you're there, because that's what's going to make you successful. As we talk about success after high school, it's what are you going to do once you're there? I have this great story. A student that I worked with one time, he was really interested in animals and biology, but he didn't want to be a veterinarian. And so I suggested there's some schools that you could do this biology research. For instance, this school called Hendrix in Conway, Arkansas. His mom had never heard of it because she was in this name branditis that I talk about. He has to go to a school that has a name that people will recognize. And I said, you will love this school. It's perfect for him. He can do undergraduate research, and he can focus on the research that he wants to. Reluctantly, she gave in. Chris went to school there. At the end of his freshman year, he had a $5,000 grant to continue his research that he had started as a freshman throughout the summer. At the end of his sophomore year, he had a $15,000 grant from the state of Arkansas to continue his research that he was doing as a sophomore. And that by the time he started his first year of graduate school at the University of North Carolina, his work of research had been published in Nature magazine, which was something his professors hadn't even done. And I think that in terms of success, it wasn't the college that he went to, or it wasn't the name of the college that got him that successful, it was what he did when he was at that school. So there's three important things that I want you guys to come away with tonight. What are the important elements that you need to know about college admissions? That's the practical side of things. Kind of what you should be thinking about right now as you're preparing for them. And then what you can do today to increase the number of college opportunities and scholarships that you might have for success after college. So I talked that third point is kind of a sound bite. I might talk about some things tonight, and I talk a lot with my hands, so not having a microphone is a good thing. Watch out. So if you see me do something like this, it might be a sound bite, and I'll try and speak it out loud, so then that way you guys can also potentially write it down. Something to talk about later, something to bring home with you. Parents, you can do this because your students are just going to listen. So number one, what are the important things that you need to know about transcripts? Transcripts are important, right? These are the classes that you take and then the grades that you make. And there's no denying the fact that when you go to college, you're going to be a student, right? You get a degree from what you did in the classroom, not how many football games you attended or how many times you went to the rec center. You're going there to be a student. And the only way to gauge the student that you will be is to understand the student that you have been, which they can see from the grades that you got in the classes that you took. So your grades are important. Your grades are important. Your grades are important. I had to push that into my seniors, or my students at Jesuit, because the boys weren't always listening. Your grades are important. At the end of the day, the better your grades are, the more options that you're going to have. But you don't have to have all A's to get into college, and I think I've already mentioned that. That you don't have to have all A's to get scholarships either. But as you know, the more A's that you have, the better it's going to look to the colleges, especially in the core subject areas as your math, science, English, and social studies. Ultimately, your grades should reflect the work that you've done in the classroom. So I'm not saying that you have to spend all of your time studying, because Blackwell said my grades are important, and so I can't do anything else besides study. But I'm going to tell you that there are no scholarships that I know of for students who have won the most number of video games, or who have logged the most number of hanging out hours. All right? So keep that in mind. Don't discount your grades. That's my first soundbite. Just don't discount them. And I am saying that it goes beyond your GPA into what your love of learning is. Colleges love the students who speak enthusiastically about their love of learning. These are the students who say, there's not enough time for me to do all the reading that I had to do, or because I wanted to do so much more, or that I didn't want to leave class because my teacher brought this material to life. And the fun classes count too. We talked about what Tracy said, the opportunities that are available to you. I know you guys have a lot of schools, or a lot of classes that you can take. A student that I worked with, Anne Marie, said she thought that she should be taking AP Physics because she was a great student. She had a lot of APs on her transcript. She was going to be applying to some of the most highly selective schools. She said, I should probably take AP Physics, but I really love astronomy. And it counts for my science that I can take in my senior year. But I don't think the colleges are going to want to see it as much. And I said, well, tell me about your love for astronomy. And she said, I love going outside and watching the meteor showers when they come. I can spend hours in a planetarium just looking at the stars that are not really there. And I said, then you need to take astronomy. Anne-Marie's going to be going to Stanford this year. And it's okay because she didn't take AP Physics in her senior year, right? She loved to learn. She had other things working for her too. But then there's also, it doesn't just matter if you're getting great grades, because if you're a B or C student, you can take the classes that you love. When I was a Jesuit, I worked with a student named Sam who really wanted to take more theology classes, and so he arranged his schedule so he could take a few more theology electives. Sam ended up going to Franciscan University. Whoop, what do you do with that? And then he's graduated actually this year. He's coming back to be in the seminary at the University of Dallas because he loved to learn. You know about Sam. So, soundbite number 2, what do you love to learn about? Take the classes that reflect that. Because your participation and your success in that class could ultimately be a letter of recommendation that a teacher writes for you to say, let me tell you about this student who worked so hard, who loved the material and participated in class. Number 2, your test scores. I think this is crazy how much stress people place on their test scores. I knew people who started studying for and prepping for tests in 7th grade. People who took their tutor on vacation with them because they didn't want to break a streak in their test prep, right? That's crazy. It's ridiculous how much stress we're putting on this. And I say to you guys, as a former college admission counselor with friends who are deans and directors of admissions for colleges and universities all over the United States, don't put more emphasis on these than the colleges do. What do I say by that? It's only a small part of your application. So generally what I say is that scores won't get you in, but they will keep you out. What do I mean by that? If you're applying to a highly selective school, you have to nail your test, right? You need a great test score if you're going to go to a school like a Yale, Harvard, Princeton. 21 on the ACT is probably not going to get you in, but the difference between a 32 and a 34 is not that big of a deal. Don't try and agonize for more points on your scores if you're just trying to get higher and higher. You should spend time on more worthwhile academic endeavors so you can say, I can take the test, this is the score I'm going to get, and now I'm going to focus on something else that colleges will actually care more about. There are over something like 1,000 schools that don't even consider tests for their admissions. They can say, yeah, you can take it if you want to, you can also write a great essay, or you can just tell us that your GPA is strong enough, we don't care about your test scores. That being said, you can't discount your tests altogether, right? Everybody knows this. Blackwell, you're crazy. I know some people are crazy about test scores, but you're crazy to say that I shouldn't be at all. Yes, you can. You need to care about your test. How many people have their driver's license in here? Quite a few students. And how many people walked into the driver's test saying, I'm just going to take it one time, see how I do, and then afterwards I'll come back because I'll have an understanding for that? Nobody, right? That's ridiculous. Maybe. Okay. 1. A confident driver. But that's the mentality that we have for our test scores. For the ACT or for the SAT, people say, I'm just going to take it one time, see how I do, and then maybe I'll study afterwards. And you don't do that for any other test in your life. So I say that your scores for sure will help you with scholarships. That again, your higher your grades, the more A's you have, the more opportunities you might have available. The higher your test scores, the more opportunities you might have, the more scholarships you could be considered for. And so they're talking about test prep a lot. I say be a smart consumer of goods and services. I liken test prep to working out. So if I was going to work out and I know that I wanted to lose a certain amount of weight, I could do it in a lot of different ways. I could read a book. Just buy a book and then say, this is what you need to eat. That's easy enough, but that won't work for me. So then I could also, I watch those infomercials on TV, like P90X. I've done it twice. Tony Horton is one of my role models. But I could do it, I could rent a DVD, or I could buy a DVD and watch it on my television, and that would be okay for me to work out and lose weight. My wife needs to be a part of a class. She won't go and work out unless there's other people who are around her doing the same thing. And then I know people also who need a personal trainer to work out one-on-one, right? Why do I tell you about losing weight and working out? Because it's the same for test prep. You can do it however will work effective for you. Buy a book, listen to classes online, go take some classes or get a one-on-one tutor. Those are all things that will help improve your scores. But what is the best thing about this, or the most important thing to take away from this, my little sound bites, know what score you're looking to get. So if you're in the top 25% and you're trying to go to Texas A&M, you know you need a 30 on your ACT for that automatic admission. But if you're just saying, I want to raise my test score because I think it'll help me get in, if I looked at your colleges and said, with the test that you have right now, you're going to get into all these schools, let's focus on some other things that might get you more scholarships. Number 3, activities. Investing in your time and your effort. Don't be a joiner like I was. I have more photographs in my high school yearbook than anybody in my senior year because of the clubs that I was involved in. And I was the guy that went to the Spanish club just so I could eat the tamales. And then I said I was in the Spanish club, and I got to take my picture when they said, Spanish club, come and take a picture. Because I needed that physical evidence to say that I was there. Don't do that. Colleges want to see the commitment that you make rather than the number of clubs that you've joined. So we say quality over quantity. And when you guys are applying, if you're applying on the Common Application, there are over 550 schools on the Common Application. You can describe in detail one of your activities to explain a little bit more about why it's been influential to you. And I think that's a great place to do it. Instead of, I could not have done that for all of the activities that I had on my resume. Keep in mind too, activities don't have to be at the school. We had a student at Jesuit who got cut from the basketball team, but basketball was his life. And so what he ended up doing was he lived close by to the Jewish Community Center. The guy wasn't Jewish, but he joined the basketball team at the Jewish Community Center, and he played a lot. And as he was playing on this rec league in the Jewish group, he ended up winning the rec league. And then he went to this thing called the Maccabee Games, which is Jewish teams who come over from all over the United States. And his basketball team won the Maccabee Games, and he didn't make the team at Jesuit. So it's kind of funny that you can do an activity outside of school and still have some recognition and still have some accomplishments. Thinking outside of the box, what are the opportunities available to you? Imagine the possibilities. Also, I say this too, that hobbies can be great fodder for essays, and they count too for activities. So there's a student who actually, a St. Anne's student named Ray, who used to work on an old car with his dad. And this is something he did every single weekend. And he spent a lot of time outside of school working on this car. I suggested that he write about this in his essay, and Ray ended up going to Texas A&M. Man, I've talked about them a lot. Sorry about that. Maybe I know my audience. So my soundbite is, as you guys are considering activities in high school, the typical trajectory, and I saw there were a lot of freshmen in here. Try out some activities and clubs in your freshman year. Sophomore year, figure out which ones you want to focus on. Junior year, start to shadow the people who are on the leadership positions or aspire for those yourself. And then in your senior year, you're the one who's leading the new freshmen who are coming in. And colleges love to see that trajectory in a resume. Number 4, the essays. This is what lets colleges see the who behind the what. This is what I say, it gives them a window into what they wouldn't know unless you told them. So I worked with a student this year who, looking at his transcript and his resume, he was a really great student, one of the top in his class, and his resume said that he was really good at band. And from that, he mixed in with 1,000 of other essays, or 1,000 of other applicants who were applying to highly selective schools who were also in the band and at the top of the class. But it was the essays that he wrote that really made him come to life, that really told a little bit more about his story that only he could tell. And this student got accepted to some prestigious schools, will be attending Duke University this fall. It's not what you think would sound impressive to a college or what you think they want to hear. Guys, this is the opportunity to just be yourself. And what Collegewise tells students to do is to own your story, to talk about the things that only you can tell. So there are thousands of essays that I've read personally about the importance of teamwork in your life, or how you struggled with something and then you worked really hard and you accomplished your goal and you learned a valuable life lesson. Or that you helped others through a community service activity and now you realize how fortunate you really are. Or when you went across on a mission trip, you understand the value of what you have. Those are overused, overplayed, and colleges hear them all the time. And it sounds the same from, oh great, another mission trip story. Oh great, another service story. Oh great, another cut from the basketball team story. What's the story that only you can tell? And you need to own your story when it comes to the essay. 5th thing, applications. There's 2 sides to the applications, the paper side and the human side. And so the paper side, I say, colleges spend months figuring out what questions they're going to ask, how they're going to ask them, and the way that they want you to respond. So read the directions. I know that we're guilty in this internet culture to just click, okay, I accept, okay, I accept, go, 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 what else, what comes next? Read the directions and the applications, because we, as a former admissions counselor, I can tell you, the ones who did it showed me that they weren't that interested in my college. If they weren't going to follow the directions on the application, what meant they were going to follow the rules when they came to my school. Ooh. Be clear and concise when you're responding to these applications online, because most all applications are online these days. And then also explain those activities that are not as easily understandable. So I worked with a lot of students who had PALs on the resume. That could mean a lot of different things. It could mean, I could have made up a lot of different acronyms if they didn't explain it to me. So the way I describe it is that if your aunt who doesn't know your high school wouldn't understand this activity, it probably needs a little bit more explanation on the paper side of your application. The second side of that, the human side of the application, keep in mind that there are people, real human beings who are reading these applications who are relatively young. So we say, always be polite and courteous, and this will set you apart. Your admissions counselor is not going to be your friend who you're texting and say, what's up? A person you can say Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. And also the students should be the ones who ask the questions. Again, this will set you apart. So we used to keep a tally in my office about how many times we heard from parents versus how many times we heard from students. And the number from parents was vastly more than the number of times that we heard from students. So if you're a student who has a question for college, you own the responsibility of asking that question to your admissions counselor. And we love to hear from you. We want to know the students who are applying and learn a little bit more about your story. I also say practice your likability, because it's really hard to admit somebody to a college if you don't like them. And if all of you've gotten is emails that have been short, or the conversations that you've had said you don't sound like a really cool person, but you have the grades and test scores to get in, I guess I'll admit you anyways, but I don't really want to. Practice your likability. I also think too, as another sound point, that should be required reading for all 18-year-olds going off to college is a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a good book by Dale Carnegie. It was written in like the 1920s, and the things that they talk about still stand true today. I think it will change your life. And then speaking to this Catholic crowd, practice the cardinal virtues about being a good person. Not only is this going to build you up as a person, but when you go to college, it'll help you stand strong in your faith. Things like prudence, temperance, justice, and fortitude. And if you don't know what those SAT words are, look them up before you go to college. Soundbite number 2, be yourself. In this college application, ultimately, you are not a product that's trying to be sold. You're a 17-year-old applying to college. And the colleges understand that. So by a show of hands, how many parents in here can tell when their student is up to something? Something seems a little fishy, and you're like, I think there might be something going on. Yeah, you're like, and if you're sitting right next to your student, you're like, I can tell. So listen to this. Admissions counselors have that same kind of sixth sense when we're reading an essay or we're reading an application and we're like, this sounds like a 50-year-old businessman, not a 17-year-old student. So keep that in mind, students. This is your responsibility, the whole college application process. Admissions counselors can know, and you're supposed to work together, but make sure that the students own the process. So the last things I want to talk about is to know what you're looking for. This is then the having no fear and being open. Keep thinking about what colleges might be available to you. I start off by telling you that there's over 2,000 four-year universities that I've been to, over 400 of them. Each one has its own distinguishing characteristics. So things that you can consider when you're thinking about where I'm going to go to college. If I'm not just focused on prestige, which is one. If you're focused on academic prestige, why is that important to you? And if that is very important to you, what do you need to do right now to make sure that you'll have the best opportunities for college, or for being accepted to those schools? If we can put prestige in its place, then in academics, what is the academic environment like? Competitive versus collaborative is a good way to describe it. Theoretical versus practical, or intense and laid back. So one of my favorite bookstore visits, I went to Swarthmore College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They sell t-shirts that say, anywhere else it would have been an A. Seriously. Because it's so hard to get an A at Swarthmore. At the University of Chicago, their model is, where fun comes to die. Not joking, they sell t-shirts as well. Because the academics are so intense, all you're doing is studying. Some people are like, sign me up. I wanna do more academics like that. But keep in mind, what is the academic environment going to be like? And then also academic programs. What is the undergraduate access like? What kind of recognition do they have? The internships available for their students, their job placement. So if you are very interested in turf grass management, Jordan Spieth, one of my former students, I taught him everything he knows about social justice. But if I wanted to learn more about turf grass management, I could go and be an Aggie at New Mexico State University. Because they have a great turf grass management program, and you might consider that. Another area that you can be looking for, location in terms of geographic location. Because the University of Minnesota, is a lot different than University of Miami in Florida, right? And some people from Texas, I worked with a lot of them, saying, I will never go anywhere north of Oklahoma because it's too cold. I can understand that. Maybe somewhere in between, University of Missouri, that gets all 4 seasons. Those are things to consider. And then also, where is that college located? Is it an urban, suburban, or a rural campus? So there are some great schools, prestigious school, you've heard of Cornell in Ithaca, New York. It only has 30,000 people in the town. Or if you're going to go to another prestigious school like Columbia in Manhattan, there's I don't know how many millions of people that live there. So they're a very different environment. What are you looking for? Big or small. So I live right around the corner from Flower Mountain High School. They have 3,200 students. If you want to go to a school that's about the same size, Loyola New Orleans, in New Orleans is a great school. If you want to go to school half the size, Regis College in Denver only has about 1,600 students. You can say that I can understand how that works. SMU is a school that's about twice the size, about 6,400 undergraduate students at SMU. So now you have a good scenario. If you want to go 10 times the size of Flower Mountain High School, go to University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, 32,000 undergraduate students. If you want to go to a school 10 times smaller than Flower Mountain High School, Wyoming Catholic College. They have an amazing outdoor leadership program where you really dive in, you go on a retreat, you're outside in the wilderness, beholding everything that God has given to you. And it's a great books environment, so it's awesome for liberal arts. And then, so mentioning that, religious orientation might be another thing you consider. Is it a Catholic college? Do they have a Catholic student center? Do they even have sensitivity to Catholic beliefs? Let's see, at St. Louis University, where I went to school, the most popular social event was the 10 p.m. student mass. I was awesome. We had about 1,200 students who would show up to mass every Sunday night at 10 o'clock at night, because no one wanted to wake up early, which I think St. Anne's has figured out. 4:30, hopefully you're up by then. At college, 10 o'clock, maybe a little bit more reasonable. So in order to get a sense of colleges that are out there, take a visit to a neighboring colleges. That we have some great schools that are within a 1-hour radius of here. So a small Catholic liberal arts college, University of Dallas, just in Irving. You want to go see SMU or TCU, it's a medium-sized suburban campus. If you want to go see a large state school, there's University of North Texas or UT Arlington. Some great schools that are close by that you can just go, take a tour, see inside of a library, the classroom, the rec center, try the food, visit the Catholic Center. Figure out what the schools have to offer, and then you can start to change your goals. So my soundbite for that is visiting a college now will help you know what you're looking for later. Here's my bottom line in my talk. Don't spend time worrying constantly about whether your SAT scores are good enough to get into Notre Dame, whether you have enough AP classes to get into Duke, or what Stanford really wants you to write about in their overwhelming number of short answer questions. You should be focusing on different things. Wherever you go to school, it's going to be an intellectual supermarket where you can learn, explore, discover, meet people, have fun for 4 years. And that you, not the name of your college, is going to determine how successful you'll be after high school. If you open yourself up to where God might be leading you and you don't ignore his promptings towards your curiosity, you'll be amazed at what he can provide for you. So Kurt mentioned, I went to school at St. Louis University because I wanted to be an aviation major, and it was something that came across my desk. I was like, I've never heard of this school, but I can fly airplanes there? Great. And so I went to school at St. Louis University. Obviously, I'm not flying airplanes these days. I find out I like talking to people too much, and talking with my hands inside the cockpit would have been maybe sometimes detrimental. But because I went to St. Louis University, God then said, here now, because you're not going to be a pilot, you can work in admissions. When I worked in admissions, I worked up in Chicago. Then I came down to Dallas, which is where I met my wife, which is where I've started my life. And now my 3 kids later saying, God had a plan for me, even if going to college and the degree that I thought I was going to get wasn't ultimately who I wanted to be. It was really what God wanted me to be. And if you went to 10 o'clock today, Red Cat said that today in his homily, which is great. It's going to be okay. And where does God want you to go? So for now, work hard